Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Divya. I'm part of TIE Kerala. So, hearty welcome to the Leader Connect session being hosted by TIE Kerala. It is my pleasure to convene this meeting today and set the stage for what promises to be an interesting and engaging session. This Leader Connect session serves as a vital platform where entrepreneurs and industry leaders come together to share insights, exchange ideas, and foster valuable connections. And today's session is particularly special as we explore the captivating exit story of Rapid Value Solutions with Mr. Rajesh Padinjaremadam, who is currently the COO and co-founder of Wizr, which is a leading Gen AI platform for enterprises. Before we proceed, allow me to introduce Mr. Saju James, moderator for today's session. Mr. Saju James is currently the partner and managing director at Fragomen, India, overseeing all operations in the country, including India inbound and India outbound services. With over 20 years of experience in human resources and global immigration, he has held key leadership roles in Fragomen's Indian operations and Asia's largest IT services organization. Saju is recognized as an expert speaker at international conferences on immigration issues and recently expanded his role to include leading Fragomen Educational Services India. Welcome, sir. Now I would like to introduce our today's speaker, Mr. Rajesh Padinjaremadam. Allow me to read out his profile also. Rajesh is a serial entrepreneur and investor. Rajesh is currently the COO and co-founder of Wizr, as I mentioned earlier, a Gen AI platform, bringing intelligence and automation to customer support and customer experience. Rajesh is also an investor and advisor for multiple startups. Prior to Wizr, Rajesh co-founded Rapid Value, a leading digital technology services and solutions firm, bootstrapping and later raising venture funding from Helion Ventures to build a 600 plus people firm with global operations and sold the firm successfully to Aspire Systems, a leading technology services firm. Prior to founding Rapid Value, Rajesh worked with Deloitte Consulting in the US, helping large enterprises adopt technology. Rajesh has an engineering degree from IIT Madras and MBA from IIM Kolkata. Warm welcome to you, Mr. Rajesh. Now I would like to hand it over to Mr. Saju James for an insightful discussion.
Good afternoon, everyone. Saju James, thank you for being here. Thank you, Divya, for the warm introduction, and thank you, Tai, for organizing this event. We have a small gathering here, so I'll make it a little more personal than being so formal about this whole event. Rajesh and I caught up 2 days back, and we were having lunch together to make sure that I'm covering everything connected with Rajesh and his entrepreneurial journey. We were supposed to be there for 45 minutes, but ended up, after listening to his story, I had to sit for 2 hours almost to hearing his interesting story. And I'm sure it's going to be an easy job for me, as it's a great story to listen as an entrepreneur. So whatever I have done, when I was comparing, I realized that, again, I've only touched very little of what Rajesh tried, and there was a lot of learning for me. So I hope this event is going to be insightful for all of you. To start with, it'll be good to know, Rajesh, your background, where you've started, probably your early days, schooling, college, before you even got into business, before Rapid Value. What's your basic background? At least the audience would want to know before we start the event.
Sure. Thanks, Saju. And so first of all, maybe I want to start off by thanking Tai for this opportunity. And I think I just want to add a couple of things since this is a Tai event. I used to be a Thai member back in Bay Area in 2007-8. This was right before my first entrepreneurial journey, and I think that kind of shaped me a lot in terms of meeting people who are building companies and such. And I think from there, becoming a Thai charter member, working with a lot of really, people who have built companies and, really able people. I mean, I think it's been a great experience. So I just want to acknowledge that. And secondly, I'll also want to thank Saju for, taking up this role. And more than that, I think whatever he mentioned was, I just had the same feeling, because I would say Saju is also an entrepreneur in this, or rather, I think his journey is very similar in terms of having come to India, set up a company's Indian unit right from scratch. It's, that is another, I'm sure that's another big, challenging journey as well. So again, thank you for hosting the session. So again, quick introduction. I just, in terms of my background, I grew up in Kerala, very much in Kerala. In fact, I think I see a lot of, I talk to a lot of people. They've grown up in different parts of India, right? Even though they're from here. For me, I've grown up completely here until I was 17 or 18. I grew up in Thrissur, fairly small, small town out of Thrissur, right? And then I did my schooling there, went to college in Thrissur, and then I did my engineering from IIT Madras, did mechanical engineering, and after that I went to IIM Calcutta for my MBA. So right after my engineering, then worked for about 8 years, mostly, couple of years in Europe, remaining in the US, worked with, started off with Infosys and then with Deloitte Consulting, and then around 2008-9, decided to kind of start off on a journey of my own, and then we founded Rapid Value around 2009-10 time frame, and then eventually we kind of we built Rapid Value. We sold it in 2020, around 20, and that's kind of been my basic background.
Rajesh, now that again we're talking about thinking about setting up a company, my question is, at what stage you knew that you really wanted to do this? One is that normally today, nowadays, when you look at students, once they complete their graduation, probably would want to work for a couple of years before they decide to go for their post-graduation. I realized that after your IIT Chennai days, you straight moved to IIM Calcutta and moved on to the corporate world. But was there any inclination that you would go this path in the long run, or would you try something at that point of time? Did you try something, or what was the background?
Yeah, so until my engineering days, I didn't really have any, I never thought I would become an entrepreneur during my engineering days or until then. And then I landed up in IIM Calcutta, right after my engineering. Now, I wouldn't call it a wise decision. Like we discussed, I advise everybody who talks to me that you should work for a few years before doing an MBA, because you go there, learn a bunch of things, and it doesn't make sense. You talk about organizational behavior, you haven't worked in a place, you don't, it doesn't, it's just another degree. But the thing that worked well for me there was of course there's a lot of learning, but other than that, in addition to that, I think the group of people that we were working with, I think that made all the difference. I think it's just an amazing group of people who had varied experience, varied interest, people who worked in different areas, chartered accountants, people who had done marketing, all coming from an engineering school where everybody thinks relatively in the same way to a much more wider sort of thought process was very, very helpful for me. And in fact, we were there during the thick of the .com boom. This was, late 90s. And then we had a couple of our seniors who had floated, and I don't know if, I think these probably, Saju, you might remember, I'm sure a lot of them won't. But there was a company called India World, which was acquired at that point. And so it's probably one of the bigger .com stories at that time. And then some of our seniors who had left campus had also set up companies. So a set of us from IIM Calcutta at that point in time. In fact, when I look back, the team would have been really, really good because somebody is heading PNG's, Asia Pacific, and really powerful, strong team. But we all said, oh, we'll do something. We went out like true MBA students. We created business plans, and then we said, oh, we'll do our internship, come back, and then do it. And by that time, the bubble burst, and then we, honestly, we didn't do anything, but at least the thought was there, right? Which kind of helped me to.
On those lines,
right.
As we went along. So, understand you joined Infosys and the experience you gained. Again, when you're looking at entrepreneurs now, would you recommend that they go through some of the corporate experiences before they even try out going alone and starting their own company? From my experience, I would say what I have learned from my corporate world is what I consider as the wealth of my experience and the exposure, the experience, the situations they throw you into, the opportunities they give you, the challenges they put forward. All of that has been a big learning for me before even I ventured into something independent.
I mean, I would probably, I don't know if there is one way or other, right? In the sense that sometimes I've seen that without experience, you also tend to kind of think without bounds, right? Yeah, in the sense you're probably not constrained, and you might do. So I think there's both kind of entrepreneurs. For me, the experience was definitely helpful, and I was telling Saju as well that right out of B school, I had this offer with. At that point, it was a relatively well-known company called I2, which was in supply chain solutions, and they had given us a Dallas offer. So it was at that point, going to US was nice and all of that. But then we all, bunch of us got, and it was one of the more prestigious jobs at that time, and we got laid off before we joined. So right, and then I, so I had an offer from Infi and from engineering. So I went back and then joined them as part of building the enterprise solutions group. But I would say that was probably, some of these things you look back and say it was really, really helpful, right? Because at that point you were really disappointed. You thought you were a really nice job, and then suddenly you're there without anything. And this was and at that point, this was 2001 June, and bubble had just burst, and then right after some time, the Twin Towers happened, and so it's all like a big mess. But for me at that point in time, I joined Infosys. We were building this group called Enterprise Solutions, and I thought it was a lot of fun and a lot of learning. So in fact, I think that kind of pretty much brought in the entrepreneurial spirit in me, because at that point we were all a bunch of young folks who really didn't know what we're doing, and we were learning at company's expense. But it was a lot of, it's good that we didn't know what we didn't know. So we're not afraid, and we would go on and pick up these big projects, somehow pull it through, and it's a great experience, right? I mean, I think for those 3-4 years, literally this was a really strong caliber team, but very little experience. And we were doing, like you said, we'll pick up something and then we'll go night, weekends. I mean, it was just of course, at that age, it was fine, but we also learned quite a bit during that. And then after that, I think the experience with Deloitte was a very different level. So I would say I learned from all of this, right? And then for me, the experience was definitely very, very useful in terms of setting up my company. So again, I don't know what's right. But one of the things I also felt is one of the problems that I had, for example, as somebody who grew up pretty much in Kerala, my first 4 years was literally trying to figure out basics of communication, right? So from there, coming to get to a point where I can actually run a business, I think I personally needed some training, right? So I think it's very personal.
What do you think that Deloitte experience, probably the consulting side of, Infi has always been on the IT side, and the focus has been on IT and technology. Moving to Deloitte, hopefully the consulting experiences would have helped you there. How do you think that experience has shaped you in looking at this opportunity?
I think, like I said, Deloitte was a very different kind of experience, but the benefit or the perspective that we got, and I think that's kind of what we have carried through in building Rapid Value was, again, I think I'm sure, I think and for me, I wouldn't probably compare it with a firm. I would probably compare it with my level of maturity and my level of experience. But by that time, the perspective of saying that technology has to be there to run for a business need, right? That I think that kind of probably the best learning that I had in terms of saying, so whenever a new technology comes in fact, Rapid Value is practically built on emerging technologies. And in fact, now the company that I'm doing today is a platform called Wizr. And Wizr is also, I think we got a couple of my teammates here. So Wizr is also kind of being built on, we're building it on Gen AI. So we try to stay ahead of the technology. But again, the thing that I try to, or the thing that I learned from my Deloitte days or during that stint was, ultimately technology is there for a reason it has to make a business impact, right? So I think that's been a great learning experience.
Now let me get back to the moment, that decision point when you said that, okay, I'm in the comforts of the corporate world, I have a stable job, my family is currently settled in the US, they're very comfortable here, but I want to do something different. What triggered that decision, and how easy or difficult was that? And when you transition from that corporate world to a startup mode, what's that which challenged you the most, and what was the most difficult adjustments you had to make in that move from, because I have gone through that big fall, which I didn't expect to be at that point of time. I could relate very well to that. That's why I'm asking this question. What was the difficult moment for you to make? One is that moment you made that decision, I want to do this. But then you're giving up a lot of things on the other side, coming out just with nothing and just a business plan. What was that moment, and how did you overcome that?
So I think the first question on what is the point at which we decided on starting, I would say probably it's a little bit more of, I wanted to do something, and then I was probably just turned 30 or something like that. And then I said, okay, if I don't do it now, maybe then I need to go through the cycles of life and do it later. So I was like, okay, maybe give it a shot now. But the other thing was, I also felt, okay, now I learned reasonably enough that maybe, I'll try and influence in terms of maybe create 100 jobs. So whatever is kind of I thought of as something I wanted to do, right? And hence we said, okay, and then I had my partner, Suresh, who was also from IIM Calcutta, he's my batchmate. And we had our third founder, Rinesh. I think, unfortunately, he couldn't join. It would have been a lot more entertaining if he was here. He has a very completely different personality. He's now making movies, and, he's not totally unlike me. It would have been a much more, more entertaining conversation. But then, so that's kind of the trigger point, right? In terms of saying we'll do something. And then we started thinking about what are some of the options that we could do and all of that. So it was almost like it was there in the back of my mind. And then there was a time point where we said, okay, now, and we felt, okay, now is also not a bad time to take a risk, because we didn't really have a lot of, we didn't have kids. I mean, we were married, but didn't have kids. So, at least from a life stage standpoint, you had time. You didn't have a lot of personal liability, or you could, you didn't have a lot of personal liability, and, you had, so for example, I had an apartment in Bangalore, which I sold off, and so it's like, fine, come back and do it. But the other part, I think, is probably, the second question in terms of what are the challenges. I guess obviously the base challenges were more like, you giving up on, and, I'm sure you probably went through the same thing as well, right? You're giving up on it at Deloitte, we would be traveling in at least international, it'll be business class, and Marriott and BMW rent. it's all, the lifestyle was very, very different. Compared to that, when you are an entrepreneur, you practically try to, especially early days, you try to, you just kind of parking at a friend's place where, things like that. So I think definitely lifestyle change was very, very, very fairly drastic, right? But I think maybe more than all of that, the whole perspective of taking the fact that, okay, now you are responsible for somebody else's payroll or their life, I think that kind of dawns on you a little bit more, I guess. At some point you suddenly realize, there's a team, and if something doesn't go right, there's a lot of people who are there in the team. So I think that's the second thing. But I would say the third part is, for me, the learning was immense, because you do all this, you learn all this manage cash flow and all of those basic things in MBA, but you don't really worry about cash flow. Once you start running a business, you realize, your cash is going to come after 3 months. You've done the work, right? It's very simple now, right? things like that. So I think it was basically a combination of both of these. But the way what helped us at that point were a couple of things. One, obviously, there was a lot of family support. When we moved back to India, my wife was more than happy to come back with me. And I think we said it's fine. Next couple of years, our lifestyle is going to be very basic. And there was an old battered up Zen at my dad's place, which I used to drive during my college days. Brought it up, so it's like all that jugaad lifestyle. But I think more than anything else, I think it's just the excitement of the work was there. We're doing interesting work. We had a really good team. I thought maybe these two things, right? The team is, for me, probably the most important thing was the team. We had a really good co-founding team, and we had a very good early team. In fact, I would say I have the same thing at Wizr as well. I'm lucky to have really good. Right now, we have a little bit more distributed team, but really good team. So
one is that you had a good co-founding team. Again, there are others who are aspiring to start something of their own. How do they identify the right partners? That's one. Obviously, Shirish and you knew each other, but Ranesh was probably at the later stage.
Right.
How did you complement each other on the business side itself? That's one. Second is, what was how was the decision towards coming to Kerala? Why not Bangalore? Because IT hub was Bangalore. Obviously, you had to service international biggies. So Bangalore would have been an option. Why Kochi first? So what's your thoughts around that?
So I think, first of all, maybe I would say in terms of picking up a co-founder or getting a co-founder, I think maybe there are two things that are important. One is complementary skill sets. In our case, me and Sirish both had consulting kind of mindset. We had done both consulting and business side. Ranesh was heavy on the tech side, and we were kind of trying to fill that gap. We found Ranesh, and then that's kind of one part. But I think the second part I feel also is that running a startup is a long game, tough game. Gets lonely. It's just there are a lot of days you are completely depressed, and there'll be one day where you're excited, right? It's like that. So I think having a right team in terms of just the personal comfort level, I think is very important. So for us, we started off with maybe another set of founders. There was one other person. It didn't, and then some reason that didn't work. And then we had 5 partners, but then 2 of them ended up being more, because all of us started part time, and then 3 of us became full time. But so to an extent, it's a little bit of a natural selection process. But then I would say maybe those 2 factors: complementary skills and the personal comfort, right? Largely driven from the fact that Ranesh was at that point working in Kochi, and he was the one who was setting up the team. So he said, I'll set up the team in Kochi, and we'll see how it goes. So there was still all that little bit of this worry about will Kochi work out, and all of that was there. But then once we started doing it in Kochi, it just really worked out well for us. And then for me personally, because we were moving here, I thought Kochi helped quite a bit, because Kochi is definitely a better place to bootstrap. When you come in with very little saving or whatever, Kochi is definitely a lot more easier compared to Bangalore. So I'd say both ways it worked out, and we got some really good talent in Kochi. We've been very, very happy about being in Kochi. And then after that, we said we'll always do this. And Sirish was in Bangalore, so we always try to do this Kochi, Bangalore, US triangle.
And you and Shirish was based out of US at that point of time.
Both of us were in the Bay Area at that point, and then we moved back.
When did you win your first client? And was the setting up of the company was based on winning a client, or you were hoping that you would win a client one day? And how long it took for you to win that big client?
So for us, we set up the company. We didn't have any clients when we set up. But then one good thing at that point in time, because we were all, we all were also not in a position where we could run without any financial. So we were doing part-time for some time. So I left Deloitte. I was doing consulting for some time, and then that's the time when we were building. But we gradually built the team, and then we at that point, we also made a conscious decision that we won't go to our connects in the beginning. We will try to go out and figure out how to win clients. And I think one of the other things that I would probably say is, in fact, this is something that I keep telling anybody who is running or who is on entrepreneurs, and especially I think in Kerala, that's probably more important, is that one of the founders or one or two have to understand how to sell, right? And you have to be very comfortable in it. And sometimes, I mean, in Kerala, I mean, obviously it's changing now. In fact, yesterday I was at a B2B sales group, right? And there we were talking all about sales, but even now, we still have, I think we make really good products here in Kochi. I know people make really good products, but we don't think so much about selling, right? So I think my point there was that, so we had consciously said, while the two of us had not sold, we've been on the business side, we've been part of sales, but we're not necessarily the hunting team. We said we will somehow build that sales skills. So I think in the beginning we tried all kind of things, and probably at that point it was, for us, AdWords inbound worked. So first client came through that, and at that point, obviously you had to show something. We didn't have a lot of team and all of that, but then we were somehow able to convince them. This was a company out of Atlanta, music streaming company. They didn't have much budget. They trusted. They said Indians are good, great, okay, and then we started working with them, right? And in fact, I would say the first, probably even the larger first client, where we probably was like a $500,000 kind of client, that also came through an inbound, and that particular one we got lucky where I was saying we just closed in two calls and then it happened. But then of course, it's been we started off very small and then gradually built on it. But we were able to get to some really good clients in 2 years.
Started in 2008. Big client came in 2010.
I would say we were incorporated in 2008. So we probably started off slowly in 2009, and then we had, I would say maybe 2008, and then 2009 we had, we were doing part-time, we had some small clients, and then 2010 we had one of the larger clients, but that's the time when we became full-time as well.
And what was again, you've had to pick a service line when you decided to look at the businesses, right? Again, product versus services. When you looked at the first assignment, you went for services because it was not that risky, or what was the particular reason that you went the services line? Whereas when you look at Wizr, probably focusing on the product side, any particular reason? And your growth completely was on the services side itself. Was there any particular reason focusing on the services side of the business?
A few things. So essentially we as a company, when we founded Rapid Value, we were basically saying some of these technologies that were emerging at that time, now they're mainstream, mobile and cloud, would really change the way businesses would operate. So we wanted to build something around it. That's kind of the thesis. Then we said we'll try and build some products. In fact, we had some concepts on some mobile publisher and a few other ideas. But then we were also very short on capital, and we didn't think we had enough credibility to raise capital at that point in time. So we said, look, we know how to do services, so we'll build services, and then maybe in the process try to build products, which I think a lot of people do. In fact, we did. So in our journey, we started off with mobile as a service line. Then we built cloud as another. Cloud is probably the largest service line. We built a few products in between. So at the end, we were probably about 25% revenue from solutions, remaining from services. But one of the things that we also realized along the way is that it's kind of very hard to mix these two, right? I mean, the DNA is very different. The thought process is very different. And then at some point in time, we figured services was doing well, and then it was sort of a conscious choice to say we'll pick one and then dive in and do it.
How much focus you had on the infrastructure side? Because from my experience, I've seen when we started in Kerala, we really went very small and looked at very basic infrastructures to start with. And at some point of time, I realized for partners who are working with you, it's so important to have great infrastructure, and especially when you have foreign clients coming in, they look at your infrastructure facilities, they look at your people, they look at the kind of facilities you have, the kind of confidence they have around the infrastructure, what you have is important. When you're looking at startups, that's one of the compromises we are seeing here in today. where Kerala Startup Mission and others are able to help set up those infrastructures in advance, which was not there in the year 2005, 2006 when we were getting into this business. Again, we couldn't catch up on that, but a quick question on that. How much the infrastructure decisions influence growing rapid value further? Because I was probably, if I was given another chance to start a company, I would probably look at good infrastructures to start with without compromising on infrastructure on the business side. So just your story, Rajesh.
Yeah, we had a we had a slightly different or kind of very similar to what you said, but it was kind of more out of compulsion, right? In the sense that when we came in here, see today there is a lot of options to do variable cost. You can figure out incubation facilities. You can take by seat and anyway a lot of the team is remote, so it becomes a lot more easier and I mean a lot more flexible. During those days, you had to have an office. So me and Sirish came with this mindset that, oh, it's fine, in the Bay Area, companies open up in garage and all of that, and then Ranesh was here, he's like, you can't hire anybody if you're in garage or whatever, so you have to be info park, right? And that's kind of the first thing, if you have to hire somebody. So we had an office outside, but then we said we'll somehow get into info park. And honestly, we had all come here with very little money. So we're trying to figure out, okay, we have some budget for 1 year and how are we going to do this? And so what we did end up doing, we were a little bit lucky because this was the year when I think 2009, 10, if you remember, things were just recovering and we finally negotiated a 2,500 square feet space. And I think we were able to negotiate some numbers there and get a good deal on that. We set up an office which was, so our thought was, okay, probably we don't need anything fancy, but the chair should be comfortable, people should be comfortable. So I would say probably our first office was, I would say maybe the worst looking in Info Park. Was that the right decision? I don't know. But at that point in time, we were also not at a point where customers were coming in. So by 2012, we actually moved to Carnival. We had a really, and in fact, by 2012, we had, again, I wouldn't say probably, world class by any standard, but what we did was we kind of did an open office concept and we made it colorful. And in fact, most of our clients who came in really loved it. And so for us, from a timing standpoint, it worked because we're not able to make that investment upfront, but gradually we did it. But one of the problems with that, like you said, was we always had like 2-3 offices. So that was a bit of a problem to manage because you'd open one and then.
Sure. Now, you spoke about people and infrastructure and how important it is to have good infrastructure to attract people. Now, on the people side, being small, you were competing with the biggies in Cochin. How was attracting talent was an issue to start with, or were you comfortable with talent acquisition from the initial days itself? Do you have different strategies during that time, or did organic growth work well for you?
So we had couple of positive, couple of negative things on the overall economy was, working well for us in the sense that 2009 again situation was bad. So we had a supply of really good. So we were able to find people, very good people. That was one thing. But the other thing that we did was at that point in time we were hiring in colleges here, but then we couldn't go into some of the top colleges here at that time. So we'd go to some of the more peripheral colleges, but then we would hire for attitude, and so we'd pick a couple of or few of the best people from there with the best attitude. But one of the things that we found was that ultimately, and we kind of tried to do that all along, we always try to hire for attitude. Again, it's not about whichever college it is, but ultimately we said we'll try and look more for attitude than anything else. And that's kind of worked out quite well. In fact, some of the people who, or I would say, all of the people who joined there during those days as freshers in 2010, this was a fairly booming technology at that point in time. In fact, a lot of them went to our client locations. They are all in abroad and they're all doing extremely well. So I would say we were largely looking for people with attitude than, people with that, fire in the belly than anything else. In fact, even for the leadership positions, one of the things that we used to try, or we used to do was, or that we kind of did that was to try and hire people who are probably one level below, what you would typically look for in a corporate level, so we look at, okay, they have the experience, but then they have that, what we call punch above weight class kind of a mentality. So that over time, that's kind of worked out quite well for us. In fact, the person who built our UX team, person who built my enterprise mobility practice, in fact, he is still with Aspire, who's our the company that acquired, right? So, and my marketing head, all of these people came with probably less experience than what a standard corporate would require, but then it's kind of a win-win, right? Because we would get people with good, good skills and good attitude, not necessarily all the experience on paper. But from their standpoint, they were looking at this in growth opportunities. I think that kind of worked. But the other thing that helped us was we were trying to also, because we are a little bit more focused in terms of technology, from a brand standpoint, we are able to garner.
Sure. Now, changing gears a bit, on the branding, marketing, and sales side, B2B marketing is quite different from B2C, and especially coming to Kochi, our contacts beyond India would be limited. So, how did you set up your marketing, branding, sales teams? Did you have sales teams in the US, in these countries, or did you rely completely in-house? And how did you go about going to the next level in marketing? Was clients a part of it, or did you have your teams completely take it? And also, a little bit insights around the kind of brands worked with Rapid Valley during those days would also be helpful for the audience.
So as a company over time, in fact, maybe from 2012 or so, from 2012, we started winning some really marquee logos. So we had pretty much all of the Bay Area brands except Google. So we had LinkedIn, all the known brands, LinkedIn, Yahoo, Facebook, all of them were customers. We also had a bunch of Fortune 500 companies, insurance companies. So we had a fairly good national presence in the US. So over time, we were able to build a really good set of marquee logos. I mean, from a team standpoint, we are about 600 plus people, right? About 100 in the US and remaining in India. So we had a pretty good logos that we had acquired. In terms, there are two things that, again, I would, we did reasonably well, and I would probably, advise startups to do is one, have a very strong positioning, know your market. If you are going to be everything for everybody, it's going to be hard. While your services, we are still very, very differentiated. So we kept a very strong focus on mobile to start off with, and then at some point in time we added cloud. But then the benefit of having an expertise in a very specific area was we are able to compete with the larger players, saying that this is the only thing we do. We are really good at it, and then we. And to an extent, also because some of these things were a little bit ahead of the curve, the bigger players also couldn't say, oh, we have somebody with 10 years experience or whatever. So we were able to kind of compete on a very good front. So I would say the first thing was positioning, right, in terms of picking that niche and then creating branding around it. I mean, I think that saying, I mean, we're really good at it and ensuring that you're really good at it. Ultimately, I mean, just saying won't help, but, once you are really good at it, that helps. Second part is we continuously invested in sales. So we started off by investing in a sales team in India who would sell from here to US, and gradually we expanded the sales teams to US. So in 2-3 years we had a fairly, I mean, again, it was a slow expansion to set up.
How big was the sales team?
So we had a team of about, I would say about, when we exited, we had about 4 people, about 7 people on site, out of which 4
on site is only US or Europe?
Only US. Out of which about 4 were hunters and 3 were account management folks. And then we had an inside sales team of about, which is the SDR or the demand gen team of about 17, 18 odd people.
References, how did it work for you? The clients, obviously, you'll need to get to know that there is a requirement, there is, especially with this large engagements when you're competing with big players, how easy or difficult it was.
If you especially in services, if you're not doing a good job, then that goes out, and other way around as well. So definitely, I think client engagement. For example, once we landed eBay, from there we got or maybe we got eBay and Facebook almost at the same time, and then from Facebook we got a reference to LinkedIn, and from there we got a reference to Yahoo. So I think that was definitely another big aspect as well, for sure.
The questions which most of us would have in mind is, now that four of you or three of you have decided to form this company, at what stage, I'm sure the finances, the need of finance at different points of time would be different. As you want to expand, you need more funding. At what stage did you make a decision that you would need additional funding to expand the operations for Rapid Value? And looking back, was it the right decision? And did that help?
Yeah, so, and I think, we had this question multiple times because, we've been largely a services company and we've been cash flow positive. That's a good thing. But at the same time, we also wanted the growth to continue, which meant at some point in time you had to invest. So that's the other part of it. These are the kind of the competing priorities. So we raised a round of venture funding about 3-4 years into the business. 2014, we raised a round of venture funding. Now, could we have grown the same pace without the funding? Probably very similar, right? So did funding help exactly in pushing the growth? Maybe. I mean, it definitely helped, but I think it helped with a lot of other things. So one, it brought in credibility. Two, it brought in discipline. So I think there is, in fact, I mean, there is even in my current firm as well, we raised an angel funding. So we had this question of, you've done an exit, so do you really need to raise this? But here there are two different things. One, here we're building a platform, so we definitely have to do it sooner or later. So you need to prepare ourselves for it. Secondly, we also think having an investor, having a set of investors is good in a way that you'll be more disciplined and you have somebody to answer to, and and it'll also force you to keep your books clean and keep your processes streamlined and all of that. So I'm sure there are lots of different thought processes around it. For us, I think the investment was definitely useful because for example, we were able to build together a consulting team of people from very people who came from very good brand, very good degrees, and I mean that team helped in growing us, and it would have been hard to put that team in place without an investor name. And end of the day, I think it is all personal comfort, right? For us, having that additional cushion just gave us a little bit more peace of mind to execute. So you're not worried about every month are you going to make the payroll, right? So I think it's a little bit. Our leadership level, I mean, I think in fact a lot of them, I would say majority joined us early on and stayed with us, right? Because they all kind of learned and grew in the process, and as the company was growing, they grew with us. And overall as a company, of course, I think there have been phases where we had retention problems because we were always in a fairly we were always in cutting edge technology. So whenever somebody would say, TCS is setting up a cloud unit, or IBM is setting up or TCS was I think Cognizant was setting up a mobile unit, or IBM was, because then you also get people from there and you lose some people. But overall, one of the things that, but I would say overall our employee retention has been very good. In fact, we were in the Great Place to Work 2 years consecutively while we are a small place. But one of the things, we did a few things I think were right. In general, at a leadership level, one of the things that we did was we would find the right people and we would give them the space to operate. That's kind of our core philosophy, was to say that find the right people, let them run the show and just enable them. And we try to actively push that throughout the organization. Of course, as the organization gets bigger, it becomes hard to enable that.
Was the decision with respect to exit, again, I'm sure 2008, 2010, it was so close to your heart. You guys built it, grew it to an extent where there was a lot of relevance. The teams were doing well. Rapid Value as an organization really created a brand for yourself in InfoPark. So that decision would have been not easy, saying that why not look at an exit at this point of time now that we've reached this stage. I'm sure you were around 600 employees by then, had some murky clients with you. Things were going well, and still there was more opportunities to grow. The tipping point when you made that decision, saying that okay, we've done enough. Why not we partner with a larger organization? And how did you select that partner or the firm to pick you? Those questions around that. Some thoughts around that.
So for us, I would say, I mean, it's definitely not an easy decision, right? I mean, it took some time to even just get over it, right? I mean, it's because you kind of nurtured it for 10 years, built it over time and all that. And we were a fairly close-knit group. I would say the key thing was we had investors, and then, you know, it would make sense to, or it's the right thing to do to provide return to investors. And then more than that, I think we also saw a very good synergy with the potential acquirer. I mean, we knew them for a long time, and we felt that, so when they had approached us, we felt that there is an opportunity to, I mean, that our team would also get really good opportunities. So it was sort of a win-win that investors were, you know, we had investors where we had to give them returns, and then on the other side, we were thinking our team would really get opportunities. And to an extent, I think our thought process or what we were looking at was to identify somebody who can give our team opportunities rather than probably who can, you know, pay the highest price. And I think that worked out because the company that acquired us, I mean, so we were about 600 people. Aspire at that point was about 3,500 odd people. So again, not, you know, we are still a significant chunk, and then they wanted our technology skills, our sales leadership and all of that. So I think it worked out very well for our team.
Also, I've heard that some of them, since acquisition, have really done well within the organization and are leading teams in the US and India and all that, right?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, I mean, in fact, somebody from my team who is managing maybe, you know, 7 odd million is now managing. I was just talking to him last week, and he's managing 20 plus million. And then, you know, our two key leaders have become part of their leadership deck, which is also not easy in a larger company. So I think that's kind of worked out quite well.
Looking back, considering all what you've done during those days, starting from a small office to what we have, what you did to a 600-member team, and finally deciding to exit. If you go back and look at what you could have done differently, what is that you would have thought about, again, at least for this group who are looking at learning from the experiences? What is that sharing you would like to share with this group? From what you've done well, okay, obviously we've heard some things which went wrong, which should not have done, and that's something which you would probably, if you're doing it again, you will probably not repeat.
Sure, and I think this is, you know, probably it's a little bit more of a life philosophy in terms of saying, you know, a lot of times, and I think when you're running a startup, a lot of times you'll have these near-death experiences, or so you will think that, okay, you know, everything is going to tumble down, and that's kind of part of building a company where you feel, and in fact, we had situations where, you know, at some point in time, we had 5 big clients, and then we felt like, okay, there's 4 of these are going to go off, and then we're going to be in serious trouble. But, you know, at that point, some things happen, right? And then I think the beauty of having a good team and a good company is that, you know, everybody is pulling it, and then there is also this thing that, you know, things, you know, you don't know what will kind of, you know, what will happen that will take you further, right? So I would say probably if I were to, when I'm doing it again, but it's I think on a everyday basis, it's very hard to kind of insulate from that feeling, right? So I think people who have been, and when I look at people who have been successful, and especially, I mean, for example, I have a lot of respect for, you know, Aspire CEO Gauri, who's built the company from ground up, and right, I think the whole vision of saying, you know, how do you keep that long-term vision intact, and then kind of not get ruffled by day-to-day or even quarter-to-quarter impact. I'd probably say that's probably the hardest, or it's been the hardest learning for me, and I'm now trying to implement that, but it's not easy, right?
something I learned from Rajesh, or I've heard from him in the past couple of days, was that three of them together started Rapid Value. They stayed together all through. There's been some changes, but then they've exited together, went into investments for some time, and I was asking Rajesh why suddenly left investments and coming back to Wizr, again a startup company itself. But one thing in common I've noticed was all of them still stayed together. They are still running three different companies, but all of them are partners of all the companies. So it's interesting that partners who've stayed together, built a company, sold the company, they went in different directions, set up or did, again, the other partner went and did movies and directed movies, and or he's invested in movies itself.
No, he's been a producer.
Yeah, he went and produced a couple of movies and did all what they wanted. Again, came back and set up three different companies, and all of them are together are partners for all these three companies together. It's very rare to see such bonding, and kudos to all of you for making sure that relation. Again, when you do a business together, it's not easy because there's a lot of conflicts. There are a lot of conflicts, a lot of personality styles. There's a lot of working relationship issues. But in spite of all that, in spite of all that differences, they stayed together and they built a company successfully, exited from it, went out and did something quite different from what each one of them wanted. Came back and again set up three different companies which are complementing each other. So it's a great thing, Rajesh. It's quite inspiring to hear all of that. Now, a little bit question on Wizr. Why did the financial side of you moved away from, exited from Rapid Value? Probably thought that you may not get back into technology again. What was the reason moved back again to Wizr? Did you not want to go back into investments, and what got you back here?
Yeah, so I think, so honestly, to begin with, when we exited, we were still kind of like in two minds, right? We were like, oh, we could grow this. This is growing well and doing well and all that. But then there were all these other aspects. So we thought we would do something back in technology, but we thought maybe we'll try something different within technology. Like, for example, we're now trying to do a product within Wizr. But after Rapid Value, we still continue to invest. We invest through Kerala Angel Network and otherwise. So we created an entity where we make some investments together and all that. So we do all of that, and then we also ran a company in between, which was kind of an investee incubated company. But end of the day, I think what we were missing was the fun of building something ground up. And then we said, okay, we just need to
Get back.
try our hand at it again. And then we said, okay, this time we'll do something on the product platform side. And more than anything else, honestly, about a year back, or maybe 2022 end or 23, we'd kind of taken a break and we said, oh, we'll just kind of figure it out. And then we started looking at Gen AI, and we said, this is actually very exciting. There's a lot of capabilities here. Let's try and see how do we bring that into enterprise processes and customer experience and customer support. That's so then Wizr kind of organically came as something that we got excited about. So we said, great, and of course, I'll do a plug here to say, we are always looking for anybody who's good, data scientists, developers, sales, any of that, right? But then,
Some sales happening here.
yeah, so, so I think it's really the fun of building a company from ground up, I guess. It's both fun and challenging, but it is what it is.
I think it's already, we passed our time. So last, just to round up, is there any guidance, learnings you want to share with this group before we open it up for questions? Anything from which we would have missed out as part of this discussion?
I think, again, for an entrepreneur, from an entrepreneur standpoint, I keep saying always put sales first. And also the other thing I keep saying is don't put yourself in a box. A lot of times people say, I can't do sales, or I can't do this. So I'd say as an entrepreneur, I would say, most of the things can be done, right? And you just need to go figure out how to do it. That's
Great. Thank you, Rajesh. Again, over to you all for any questions.
Hey, hi Rajesh. I'm from Fragomen, Saju James. One question, it's been striking. I wanted to ask you this one question. At any point of time, any day, did you feel, when you returned and you started the new firm, any day that you felt, oh my God, this was a huge mistake. I shouldn't have done this, and you might have had difficult days, right? Have you felt like the one most bad one? Have you felt that this was a huge mistake?
You mean in the second venture? Or the first one?
The first one.
Yeah, I think,
seasoned.
and I think all the entrepreneurs here would probably say that, you keep getting that feeling, on and off, right, every time. but, but look, I think once you're in there, you kind of just pulling through. So at some point, you do have low days, but you're kind of saying, okay, you just kind of in the thick of it that you'll pull through is what I felt. So I never felt that shouldn't have done it. I kind of enjoyed the journey, and I don't think I would have done it any other way. I enjoy the entrepreneurial journey. Right?
I'm from Pre-Magic. You already invested in Pre-Magic. Okay, my question is, you started your journey with 5 members, right? So in that 5, you did some filtering and you were like 3. So that decision took you to like one extent, and that company got exit. Then again you guys started like 3 companies. It's a magical thing. So what made you to select those 3 from this 5?
No. So I think, there what happened was we all and this was all the point where, for example, when we started our second company, we were a lot more comfortable financially. So we all know we are going to do this full time, we are fine, right? But when we started the first one, the 5 of us who started, all of us were in it part time at that point in time, because we couldn't do it other way around. And then 2 of them decided to stay in their corporate life. That's what happened. So it's a little bit of, I would say it's a little bit of their decision in some sense, right? Because they said, because all of us were in corporate, we were all doing part-time for some time, and out of the 5, 2 said we were going to continue to stay in corporate. And the other 3, me and the other 2, we said we will, we're going to get full-time. So it's a little bit of that. But I'd say it's also a little bit of comfort feel as well, right? Comfort feel, and look, I think it's not just comfort feel, I think it's also a risk appetite question. And it's a very personal thing, right? Where, you have a home in the US, it becomes much harder to make the decision. If you don't own much assets, then you're like, fine, you'll try it out.
The question that he asked. So when tough decisions were made, Rajesh, in fact, I am sure that you have gone through all the tough decisions and all the partners. When such tough decisions were made, in fact, was it made by consensus, or how do you actually convince the other partners, or all the partners made the same decision, or who took that particular lead to take your earlier venture to that success?
What we had done was, while 3 of us acted as partners, we had a very good rapport, so we had a fairly good understanding. But then we also had, at that point in time, we had a structure where I was the CEO, and Suresh, my partner, was the COO, and Ranesh was the CTO. Now in Wizr, I'm doing it reverse, right? Which then means that the buck stops with the CEO. CEO has to make the tough calls, and you discuss and try to convince others as much as possible. But I think so far as the team is working together, they will, there might be a lot of things where I might disagree with the other person. I might disagree, but then I have to let him make the decision, right? I wouldn't say, even though I was the CEO, I made all the difficult decisions, but then it's like, as a group, you have to come to a consensus to say, okay, if it's a difficult decision, it's fine, you just got to do it for the benefit of the company, right? Ultimately, you're trying to be leaders, or you're trying to lead a company, which means you will have to take unpopular decisions at times, right? Which is good for which is required for the survival and growth of the company, then you just have to do it. So we had a structure, so we went by the structure largely, but then we had this understanding where, okay, we'll argue forever, but then at some point in time we'll say, okay, this is the decision, and we'll go.
What are the major pain points you faced there?
In where, sorry?
In sales and marketing abroad. What are the major pain points?
First of all, US was our primary market, so we were always kind of reaching out to US. So initially, with very limited budget, the challenging part was how do you build a sales team selling to the US. We started off building a small team here in India who's sitting here and then selling into US. And they were probably doing smaller deals, and then we would travel a little bit and then close. So that was challenging because you are kind of sitting in the middle of the night and taking a call because you basically, you don't have a lot of people there, so you're pretty much trying to field all the calls. You might have a call. I would say that particular phase was challenging, right? And then gradually, as we had resources, we started gradually expanding the team. We had more people there, and then or in fact, I came back to India and then I moved back to US. So then it became that kind of eased out. So I would say that early stage in sales is always challenging, and especially you're trying to sell to a different geography. But you just got to bite the bullet and do it, I guess. I mean, and we are now at the stage where I'm facing the same challenge. So.
So you actually built a company in the service side, and you are now building in the product side. So what do you see the difference in the sales GTM motion compared to these two different animals?
No, but honestly, I am still trying to kind of learn that, right? In fact, yesterday there was a B2B sales, some group, Arjun and Profound, these guys were there.
Yeah.
So I was also trying to understand from them, right? I think the product sales motion has to be, I mean, assuming it's sales led, it's got to be a lot more, velocity based, is what I understand, right? I mean, so I think somebody was saying the sales, their AE, the top AE sells about 50 deals in a year or 50 deals in 14 months. In services, it's unthinkable. You do 3 deals, you're happy, right? 3 or 4 deals max, right? You are not going, but the deal sizes are bigger. But here, for example, these guys are talking about 14K ACV and 50 deals. So the top guy is doing about 700K with that. Whereas in services, top guy would do maybe 3 deals at 750K average. So, he would sell 2 mil. So I think the thought process itself is very different. So I mean, honestly, I'm still trying to figure it out. That's kind of my quest right now, trying to, do that mapping in terms of the difference.
Sure, thanks.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rajesh, for that insightful session. I personally learned a lot. It was quite interesting to learn your story. There's a lot of learnings for me personally as well. Thank you, Tai, Divya, for arranging this, and thank you all for being a wonderful audience. Thank you.
That was a brilliant session. So now I would like to request Mr. Saju, as a token of appreciation, to give away a memento to Mr. Rajesh. Please join to hand over the memento to Mr. Saju James, who did a wonderful job. Thanks a lot. We'll see you in the next program of Thai Kerala. Thanks a lot.